Divorce. It's a great divorce. Finally, I can get rid of you. I've taken care of you all these years, and I'll be taking the entire retirement allowance. Upon returning home, my husband, Anthony, said these words to me. Divorce? What do you mean by taking the entire retirement allowance? I was about to congratulate him on reaching his retirement day, but his words shocked me to my core. But his tirade didn't stop there. Of course, I'm going to use the retirement allowance however I want. I've finally been freed from the shackles of that tedious government job. Thinking about being free from you makes today a real celebration. What? I was stunned into silence by his selfishness. He continued his harsh words, aiming them at me. You're fired, fired. Housekeeper fired. Get out. I've been supporting you all these years because you couldn't hold a job. Be grateful for that. Here's the divorce papers. I've already signed them. Write your name and get out. Thinking about how many years I had spent with such a man made me feel pathetic. I am Nancy, 62 years old. Due to a chronic illness since childhood, I was unable to have children. I married Anthony, 3 years my senior, when I was 30, and we spent 32 years together. When I was in elementary school, I often had coughing fits that wouldn't stop and caused breathing difficulties. My parents took me to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with bronchial asthma. Treatment started immediately, but the symptoms never fully disappeared. Despite this, my condition wasn't severe, and I was able to graduate from elementary, middle, and high school. After high school, I even got a job as an office worker. My bronchial asthma worsened when I turned 25. Even slight physical exertion caused breathing difficulties, and I couldn't continue working without using an inhaler. The trouble I caused at work led me to resign when I was 28. Although I managed to get disability benefits, my only income came from that, and I had to move back in with my parents. Things took another turn for the worse when my doctor told me that pregnancy could worsen my asthma. I was an only child born to elderly parents. Worried about my future, as I couldn't work or have children, my parents discussed my situation with various relatives. That's when my kind Aunt Betty came up with the idea of introducing me to a man. Nancy, there's a nice man with a government job. What do you think? But I have a chronic illness. I can't work, and I can't have children. That's okay. I told him about your situation, and he still wants to meet you. I highly recommend him. Well, if you say so. Because of my illness, I never considered marriage. However, feeling guilty for worrying my parents and thinking that if there was a man willing to marry me despite my illness, I should at least meet him, I agreed to the introduction. This is Anthony. And this is Nancy. Hi. I'm Anthony. Anthony, introduced by my Aunt Betty, made a quiet and reserved first impression. Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy. Nice to meet you. Throughout our meeting, Anthony never put on a friendly face. But, with my illness making me feel inferior and thinking it was a miracle that someone would be interested in me, I started dating him with marriage in mind. While dating, Anthony wasn't particularly friendly and sometimes showed signs of pride. However, despite his shortcomings, he seemed like too good a man for someone with my chronic illness. Because of that, I married him the year I turned 30. Even after marriage, Anthony never became more affectionate, but I noticed he became talkative after drinking. Most of the time, he just complained about work. Damn it. They always blame everything on me. Sure, I made a mistake, but it wasn't all my fault. Listening to his complaints, I felt he had a tendency to blame others for his mistakes, which probably annoyed his colleagues. Still, he was the one supporting our household. Knowing I couldn't have children, I was grateful he never complained about it. I devoted myself to household chores to make his work life as pleasant as possible. However, as the years went by, he seemed to lose interest in me. Our conversations were mostly about practical matters, and if we did talk, it was me listening to his complaints about work. We never went out together, and I realized he didn't mention the fact that I couldn't have children because he simply didn't like kids. I tried to make up for it by preparing his favorite meals and giving him thoughtful gifts on his birthday and Christmas. I also tried to engage him in conversation, but it never reached his heart. He never gave me gifts or words of appreciation. I often felt like just a housekeeper. Yet, there were no other problems, and he was supporting me. One time, while talking to friends I met at my floral art class, they said their relationships with their husbands were similar. My husband and I hardly talk. But isn't that normal? Same here. We only talk about the kids. Is that so? I don't know much about other families, so I was worried. It's normal. It's not just your family, Nancy. Apart from the friends I met at the floral art class, I had no one else to consult. Hearing about other couples' lives made me realize that marriage might just be like this. Around the time we had been married for 15 years, both my parents passed away in quick succession. With their passing, our connections with relatives diminished significantly. It was around this time that Anthony's behavior started to become strange. Even with our limited conversations, after being married for so long, I understood how he was at work. Anthony, who worked at a government office, wasn't the type to strive for higher positions. He didn't socialize with his colleagues much and left work right on time every day. He was probably quite isolated at work. He started coming home late, claiming it was due to overtime or socializing with his boss. One day, while preparing his suit for dry cleaning, I found a long, light brown hair on the collar. My hair was black, so it couldn't be mine. The suit also smelled of a sweet perfume. Though he said it was just socializing with his boss, I couldn't shake the thought of infidelity. A single hair is not enough to prove infidelity. Still, I couldn't shake the thought of Anthony having an affair. I spent most of my time at home, aside from the floral art class and shopping. Having done office work before, I was used to detailed tasks. Since that day, I began meticulously recording his behavior. Days that felt off and why. Days he came home late. Days he was unusually cheerful. After some time, I found red lipstick on one of his shirts. When I asked a friend from the floral art class, she said no club woman would do that. She suggested it was a declaration of war from a mistress to the legal wife. A husband who had no other enjoyment might have started an affair and lost all sense of boundaries. My friend's words struck a chord with me. Indeed, he had few pleasures. His main joy was having a drink with dinner. If he had started an affair after turning 48, it seemed plausible. That might be true. If he starts dipping into the household funds for his affair, you need to be firm. Understood. Soon after, Anthony started staying out all night without any notice. It wasn't just that. As my friend had warned, he began withdrawing money from our joint bank account without telling me. I wasn't working, but I made an effort to ensure Anthony could work comfortably. Our household funds belonged to both of us. I couldn't tolerate him using it without permission, so I confronted him. Coming home without notice, what's going on? What's it to you? It's just a guy thing. Money is being withdrawn from our joint account. Is that also a guy thing? I earned that money. I can spend it however I want. I don't need to explain anything to you. Just keep doing the housework. With his dismissive response, I lost all trust in him. From then on, I meticulously recorded the days money was withdrawn from our account and the days he came home late. One day, while picking up Anthony's wallet that had fallen in front of the closet, its contents spilled out, revealing a card and a discount coupon from a suspiciously named hotel. I was appalled, wondering if this was what he meant by socializing with the guys. My distrust for him reached its peak, so that night, while he was in the shower, I decided to check his mobile phone. Anthony somehow believed I was not tech-savvy, but that was far from the truth. I handled all our phone contracts and even had his phone registered in my name. Back then, phones didn't have fingerprint or facial recognition, only a 4-digit passcode. He had set it to the last 4 digits of our home phone number. He had unlocked his phone in front of me several times, so it wasn't hard for me to access it. As expected, the phone only had call and short message features, making it easy to find evidence of his infidelity. There were messages exchanged with multiple women. Most seemed to be club women, but there was one woman he frequently sent messages to. From the content, it was clear she was his favorite. "What is this discount coupon for a hotel?" That's none of your business. It's adult stuff. Stop whining about everything I do. After that, my relationship with him became completely cold. His infidelity went beyond limits, with large amounts of money spent on his mistress, leaving us unable to buy a house or save any money. In the midst of this, I once brought up the topic of divorce. You think you can live alone without anyone to rely on? You can't even work. Disability benefits alone won't support you. Just keep being a housekeeper. If I get alimony and a share of the assets in the divorce, I can live on my own. Don't be stupid. You know how much we have saved. Fine, I'll pay you alimony little by little, in long-term installments until I die. Anthony only stayed married to me because he wanted a convenient, non-complaining housekeeper. But for someone who couldn't work, that might be the same for me. Thinking that, I couldn't argue back and felt pathetic. Not knowing what to do, I sought help from my friends at the floral art class. Time passed, and the day of his retirement arrived. Divorce. It's a gray divorce. Finally, I can get rid of you. I've taken care of you all these years, and I'll be taking the entire retirement allowance. Upon returning home, Anthony said these words to me. Divorce? What do you mean by taking the entire retirement allowance? Despite our cold marriage, I wanted to congratulate him on his retirement. And yet, this is what I got. Yeah, the retirement allowance I earned from years of hard work. I'll use it to live with my mistress. She's been waiting for this. A mistress? That's such a selfish thing to say. What are you talking about? Of course, I'm going to use the retirement allowance however I want. I've finally been freed from the shackles of that tedious job. Thinking about being free from you makes today a real celebration. What? I was stunned into silence by his selfishness. Anthony continued with his harsh words. You're fired. Housekeeper fired. Get out. I've been supporting you all these years because you couldn't hold a job. Be grateful for that. Here, the divorce papers. I've already signed them. Write your name and get out. Our savings weren't substantial. Anthony was counting on his retirement allowance to start a new life with his mistress. Smiling broadly, I faced him. Understood. Thank you for everything up to today. So, I won't be seeing your face anymore from now on. I snatched the divorce papers from Anthony and signed them immediately. Then I carefully put them into my pocket. Now the divorce is finalized. Noticing the change in my demeanor, Anthony stammered. Yeah, that's right. Turning my back to Anthony, I took a large envelope out of the closet. Let's have a look at this. I slammed the envelope onto the table, causing its contents to spill out. Invoices, alimony, what the hell is this amount? It exceeds my retirement allowance. What's going on? On the table was the alimony invoice from the divorce settlement. Seeing the amount, he raised his voice in anger. Rather than me explaining, let the lawyer do it. Lawyer! Ignoring Anthony's shock, I opened the door to the adjacent room. Nice to meet you. I'm from the law firm. There stood a lawyer in a suit, offering his business card. 17 years ago, the day after I first talked about divorce with Anthony, friends from the floral art class came to check on me. From what you've said, if you divorce now, you won't get much money. If possible, wait until your husband retires and take all the retirement allowance. That sounds like a good idea. Your husband doesn't seem to want to leave you immediately. Oh, Nancy, my brother works at a law firm. It's best to involve a lawyer early on, and I can introduce you at a friend's rate. I think I'll ask for your help. When I went to the law firm my friend introduced, they advised me to gather solid evidence of infidelity if I wasn't divorcing immediately to secure a favorable outcome in the future. They also offered comprehensive support for what I couldn't manage on my own. 17 years passed. The total amount he had spent on his mistress was substantial. The total alimony exceeded his retirement allowance. Recently, when I checked his phone, I saw messages with his mistress about telling me about the divorce right after he retired, so I had the lawyer come to my home in advance. The amount he spent on his mistress from household funds was about $1,000 a month, totaling over $200,000 over 17 years. Adding $30,000 for prolonged infidelity, the total exceeds Anthony's retirement allowance. Anthony, clutching the detailed invoice I had slammed down, trembled as the lawyer explained. Wait a minute. There's no proof I spent that much from the household funds. And no proof of a 17-year-long affair. I've been recording all withdrawals from the joint account used for the affair for 17 years. I also have records of communications between Anthony and his mistress. Copies of the evidence are in the envelope. You looked at my phone without permission? It's not your phone. It's my phone that I contracted and lent to you. So it's my phone. This is ridiculous. You probably saw me as a convenient, compliant wife. That's why you didn't care if I found out about your mistress or the money you spent. That was your mistake. I am a person, too. I have feelings. It was the first time I had shown such a strong attitude toward him. He was speechless with surprise. What is this? Rest assured, I'll file the divorce papers first thing tomorrow. Damn it. Pathetically, Anthony spat those words and fled the house. To graduate from my life with him, I immediately moved out the next day and started living alone. With the help of friends from the floral art class, all moving preparations had been made. I also submitted the divorce papers, officially severing ties with him, which made me feel immensely relieved. I changed my phone number and didn't tell him my new address. He had no interest in my social circles, so he didn't know any of my friends' contact details. He wouldn't be able to contact me even if he wanted to. I had no intention of reaching out to him either. However, about a week after submitting the divorce papers, I received a call from the lawyer, who updated me on his situation. According to the lawyer, without his retirement allowance, his mistress left him. She had only been interested in the money he would bring. Even the other women he had been seeing had no interest in being with him. Anthony, with no money, was abandoned by everyone. Like me, he had no one to rely on. He had no close friends or family. His pension was limited due to club debts. Anthony told me about his situation, mixing it with complaints. He wanted to reconcile with you, but I told him it was impossible since the divorce papers were already submitted. There was no way I'd take him back. I didn't care about his struggles. I thanked the lawyer and hung up. I am happy now. My asthma attacks have decreased. It must be because the stress from living with him gone. With disability benefits, Social Security, and alimony, I can live comfortably without luxury. Also, I enjoy working remotely with a computer, reconnected to society after a long time. My friends from the floral art class were happy about my divorce, and we meet more often. My life used to rely on Anthony. But now, I am determined to live my life on my own terms.
I never filled out the paperwork for our marriage, and there won't be any division of assets. I'm marrying my 20-year-old employee.
Christopher's eyes sparkled as if his prank had been a huge success.
Surprised, huh? The truth is, we're not officially married. We're not husband and wife. I never filled out the paperwork. So you have no right to blame me for my affairs.
Christopher and I have been living together as a married couple for 3 years. His effervescent smile, the likes of which I've never seen before, makes me uncomfortable.
Thank you so much for taking care of my mother. But I don't need you anymore, so let's get a divorce. Oh, no, I mean, let's just end our cohabitation.
I can't hide my shock at his confession from the bottom of my heart. You're lying, right? Please tell me this is some kind of joke. I was filled with disbelief. Wait, you don't know anything? The more he laughs, the calmer I become. Because it's Christopher who doesn't know anything and is misunderstanding things. I'm Patricia, 32 years old. I've been married to the company president for 3 years. We don't have any children yet. Hearing just that, you might think I'm a graceful wife, but in reality, I'm living a pretty tough life.
Your posture is terrible. Straighten up.
Oh, I'm sorry. When my mother-in-law Barbara scolds me, I immediately straighten my back. I reflexively reacted to Barbara's voice, but right now I'm at home folding laundry. I'm not in front of others or having a meal. The home I share with Barbara is not a place where I can relax. I met my husband Christopher about 5 years ago at the hospital. It started when Christopher's mother, my current mother-in-law, was hospitalized for a minor stroke. I was working there as a nurse. Barbara is almost completely paralyzed on one side of her body and can't move as she wishes. Despite the hardships of hospital life, she always kept a calm face. She shows respect not only to the doctors but also to us nurses and the cafeteria staff. Even when afflicted by illness, her noble character remained unchanged. Apparently, she's the wife of the president of a well-known company in this area. As expected of a president's wife. I admired her. Then Barbara remembered my name, and we gradually became close. She brought up the idea of marrying her son Christopher, which brings us to today.
I'm home.
Welcome back. You must be tired from your business trip.
Yeah.
Around the same time as our marriage, my father-in-law passed the position of president to Christopher. I live with my husband's retired parents and support the family behind the scenes.
Here, I brought you a souvenir. Eat it as a snack with Mom and Dad.
Thank you, as always. Christopher is 40 years old this year. It seems he had a few girlfriends, but he never got married. Barbara pushed him, and he ended up marrying me. He's a man of good conduct and devoted to his work. He never fails to bring me souvenirs when he goes on business trips. Why did such a wonderful man remain unmarried until his late 30s? Of course, there's a reason for that. It's because he has a hidden difficult personality. After finishing my work for the day and entering the bedroom, I sat down on the bed. Enveloped by the soft bed, I unintentionally let out a deep sigh. At that moment, Christopher, who should have been sleeping in the bed next to me, turned to face me.
What was that just now?
Sorry, I'm just a little tired.
Why? Why are you tired?
The calm demeanor Christopher had shown in the living room earlier was gone, and he questioned me in rapid succession.
Hey, answer me. Why are you tired when you don't even work, Patricia?
My daily life is pretty tough. I prepare breakfast from 6 a.m. and then we eat. In between, I have to assist Barbara, who has a physical disability. The house has been remodeled to be accessible, so she can live in a wheelchair, but Barbara tries to walk on her own feet as much as possible. If that were all, I might still have some breathing room. But at Barbara's recommendation, I attend cooking classes and etiquette classes. On top of that, I do clerical work at Christopher's company 2 to 3 days a week, so my schedule is packed tight. I don't have time to enjoy spa treatments or afternoon tea like the beautiful president's wife you see in TV dramas. Moreover, Barbara is always watching, so it's impossible to take even a short break on the sofa.
Taking care of the house and your mother-in-law is a given as my wife. Those classes are just a hobby, right? If you are a well-mannered person to begin with, you wouldn't need to do them now. Don't tell me you're calling just helping out with the family business work, are you?
Christopher laughed in exasperation. When I remained silent, lacking the energy to argue back, Christopher looked satisfied as if he had refuted me. I used to complain to Christopher that it was tough not having time to rest, but I've stopped doing that. There's no point in saying anything, and it only makes me more tired. It's true that every day is hard. But the reason I can continue this life is that I can see the results.
Patricia, do you have a moment?
Barbara called out to me. I braced myself, thinking I might have made some mistake.
The flowers you put in the entrance are so beautiful. They really show your easygoing and kind personality.
When I'm praised by the strict Barbara, the joy feels 2 or 3 times greater. At first, I was scolded all the time and often cried at night. Finally, I'm becoming able to behave in a way that's not embarrassing for a president's wife. However, Christopher dislikes doing things together as a married couple. Even for parties where married couples are expected to attend together.
It's embarrassing if you come, so you don't have to.
He refuses. I think it would be more embarrassing to be seen as a wife who doesn't support her husband, the president, but
pretend you caught a cold that day.
He ends the discussion with that one line. The story of how we met at the hospital has been slightly distorted, and with my pale skin and slender build, I'm thoroughly perceived as a sickly wife. I've become someone who rarely appears in public. Christopher, who outwardly shows concern for my health in such situations, is a kind, wife-caring husband only on the surface. Behind his smiles, he mocks me, and though he's undoubtedly having an affair, in the midst of my busy days. I've noticed lipstick on his shirts. And not just once or twice. It's probably a blatant provocation from his mistress. It seems even his mistress looks down on me. I carefully hand-wash the lipstick stains on his shirts, but a faint pink color remains. Lipstick? I don't know anything about that.
I sometimes go to places with hostesses for business entertainment, so maybe it got on me then.
I've confronted him about the lipstick before, but Christopher wasn't fazed at all. The lipstick was on the inside of his shirt, where it couldn't have gotten unless he took his clothes off.
Huh? Wait, are you suspecting me of cheating? That's right, I am cheating. So what? Is that bad?
Though I was determined not to let him make excuses, Christopher's cheerful and composed demeanor left me speechless. Just kidding. I don't have time for an affair. I'm an extremely busy president, you know. I'm occupied with business trips and entertaining clients. Oh, I have another business trip next week. I feel like I might collapse from overwork. I'm not like you, with too much free time on your hands, imagining strange things. I work so hard to provide you with decent meals, even sacrificing my sleep, and you say such horrible things. But you know what? What if I really were having an affair? You want to get divorced? Even though you're unemployed? I wonder what I hoped to achieve by pursuing Christopher's infidelity. I had expected him to either apologize or get upset. I never thought he'd tease me with a twinkle in his eye. His unexpected reaction stops my thoughts. The word divorce flashes in my mind. But I don't have the time to think deeply or the energy to take action. Just the same hectic days passed by as always. Then one day, I was scolded by Barbara.
You are Christopher's wife. Behave in a way that doesn't embarrass you as a wife and a member of this family.
She may have noticed my cold attitude towards Christopher. Barbara's words weigh heavily on my already burdened heart. Furthermore, Barbara presented a harsh proposal.
Patricia, you need to work more. What?
Work. I'm already exhausted. I thought I was doing a perfect job with the housework, but what kind of unreasonable demands will she make now?
Work at our company. Not just a few days a week, but more.
That's what Barbara said. I unconsciously shouted.
Impossible. I can't.
For the first time, I saw Barbara's mouth hanging open in surprise. My brain tells me not to say it, but my mouth moves on its own.
I've had enough. It's impossible. I can't work any more than this. Your son's wife isn't free labor. I'm not a convenient tool to be used for free. I can't do any more than this without even getting paid, just because I'm your son's wife.
My voice cracked halfway through. It's pathetic to cry in front of others as an adult, but I couldn't hold back the overflowing emotions. Actually, I'm being forced to work for free at Christopher's company.
Even if I receive a plentiful living allowance, my spirit is just wearing down without being compensated for my labor.
Barbara's face, frozen in shock, quickly contorted. And from Barbara's mouth, I hear unexpected facts and plans. In the end, strongly urged by Barbara, I prioritized work. I quit the etiquette classes, but I have no time to rest as I do housework, support Barbara, and work. I convinced myself that the busier I am, the better I can forget Christopher's betrayal. But one night, Christopher's ultimate betrayal is revealed. Can you leave now? Suddenly being told this late at night in the bedroom, I lifted my heavy eyelids, already half asleep. Christopher stands with his arms crossed, looking down at my face from above.
Why? I'm already sleeping. If you don't like sharing a bedroom, you sleep in the guest room tonight, Christopher.
It's a stupid prank to deliberately wake me up and try to kick me out. Christopher is grinning as if he's plotting something. He's probably been drinking. That's why he's become bold and is picking a fight.
Huh? Don't get the wrong idea. I want you to leave this house, not just this room.
I rub my eyes and tilt my head. Christopher raises his chin and smiles, looking pleased. For now, get up. You're not allowed to be here anymore. Get out right now. We're getting divorced. Oh, wait. Maybe I won't divorce you after all. He's saying strange things. Maybe because I'm still half asleep, I can't understand the meaning.
Why a sudden divorce? Huh? Did you get serious with your affair partner?
It feels like I'm dreaming. Since Christopher was laughing, I wasn't scared of him and I couldn't help but to ask him straight. After I spoke, it crossed my mind that Christopher might get angry, but unexpectedly, he opened his eyes wide and burst out laughing. He was laughing so hard, clapping his hands and holding his stomach. You're misunderstanding. You have no right to accuse me of cheating. You're making one big mistake. Didn't you know about that? Of course you wouldn't. Just when I thought he was suddenly provoking me, the next moment, he made a shocking revelation.
I'm marrying a 20-year-old employee. I never filled out our paperwork for marriage, so there's no property division.
Still unable to stop laughing, Christopher proudly dropped a huge bombshell on me, his shoulders shaking.
What?
I was stunned and at a loss for words.
You didn't know, right? Believe it or not, we're not married. We're not husband and wife. The truth is, I never filed for a marriage license. That's why you have no right to blame me for cheating. Patricia, your mouth is hanging open. You look stupid. Oh well, I guess it can't be helped. It's shocking to be told we're not married, isn't it?
Christopher's eyes sparkled as if his prank had succeeded. We had been living together as husband and wife for 3 years. I had just been told that these entire 3 years were a lie.
Remember when we got married? On our anniversary, I surprised you by presenting the marriage certificate. Well, that was a lie. I never filed it. So, Patricia, you're not a wife, just a live-in partner.
Christopher had a bubbly smile I'd never seen before. I couldn't tell if he was happy because he could marry a young girl or if he was enjoying tormenting me. Either way, it was an unpleasant smile. Thank you so much for taking care of Mom. Thanks to your support with her rehabilitation, Mom is now able to manage her daily life to some extent. I appreciate it. Well, since I don't need you anymore, let's divorce. Oh no, my bad. Let's end our cohabitation, please. It's not a divorce, so there's no hassle of alimony or property division. It would be great if you could leave soon. Christopher wiped the corners of his eyes, laughing so hard that tears were welling up. The more he laughed, the calmer I became. Because it was Christopher who knew nothing and was misunderstanding.
Wow, you don't know anything, do you?
Christopher still didn't drop his mocking laugh. I was truly shocked to hear his confession. You're lying, right? Please tell me this is some kind of joke. We're not married? There's no way. I held my head in disbelief. I know it's hard to believe, but I never had any romantic feelings for you from the start, so I had no intention of marrying you. But I needed someone to take care of Mom, and I was at a good age, so I figured I could keep you by my side as a wife temporarily. I can't believe this. Yes. It's unbelievable, right? But I'm tired of laughing, so accept the reality. It seemed Christopher's laughter had settled down too. He must have been satisfied after thoroughly insulting me.
No, I still can't believe this.
I was still in shock. Christopher, who was satisfied on his own, now began to get irritated with me for not keeping up. What is it with you? We're not married, so get out. You're slow on the uptake. Normal people would understand. I can't put it any simpler than this.
That's not it.
I took a breath and told him.
I can't believe you thought we weren't married.
I looked straight into Christopher's eyes and conveyed it.
If we're not married, why do I have the same last name as you? I caught a cold a few times and went to the hospital, and I've renewed my driver's license.
I've been living with that name for 3 years. There's no way we're not married. Now it was Christopher who couldn't understand. Did you really think you could deceive me for years just by not filing a marriage license? That kind of lie would be exposed immediately, wouldn't it? Didn't it ever occur to you that it might be exposed through hospital or government procedures? Christopher's gaze darted back and forth, becoming restless. He finally seemed to realize that he was no longer in a position to laugh. I really can't believe you. Christopher's plan was far too foolish. He appears to act like a respectable president in public, but I worry about how empty his head must be. I can't believe this. You've been deceiving me? For some reason, Christopher acts like he's the victim, stumbling backward. Deceiving? I never imagined you thought we weren't married in the first place.
That's a lie. Then when did you realize I was single?
The day after you surprised me with the marriage certificate.
Wait. You knew that long.
As Christopher's body recoils in shock, I can't hide my own surprise. We had finished our engagement party and started living together a month before the wedding. But Christopher insisted on having the ceremony on a special day like Christmas or a birthday, so he kept delaying submitting the marriage paperwork. I had been waiting all this time, only to be suddenly told about a surprise wedding on some anniversary. You were so particular about the wedding date, so I found it odd that you decided to get married on the anniversary of our first movie date. I don't even remember that anniversary. It was just an excuse, wasn't it? Christopher hunches his shoulders, making himself smaller. I continue speaking in a monotone. But the next day, I found our marriage paperwork tucked in a stack of old newspapers. I was so puzzled about why it was there when it should have been submitted to the city hall. Just as Christopher tilts his head in feigned confusion, the bedroom door swings open. I instinctively straighten my posture. There stands Barbara. That's right. I was the one who found that unsubmitted paperwork. I was baffled by such an oversight. I hurriedly leap off the bed and rush over to Barbara, who was leaning against the wall. As I lend her my arm, Barbara fixes her sharp gaze on Christopher.
Dismayed by your carelessness, Patricia and I went to submit that paperwork ourselves. To think you intentionally didn't submit it. How dishonest of you.
Scolded by Barbara, Christopher's demeanor takes a complete turn. He suddenly prostrates himself on the floor, shouting apologies at the top of his lungs.
I'm sorry. It's not like that. I just wasn't ready to get married yet, but I did intend to marry her someday.
Even though you've been deceiving Patricia all this time? Christopher desperately searches for his next excuse, shouting again.
That's not it. I forgot we weren't married.
Did you also forget what you just said a moment ago? You're the one who blurted out that you weren't married. You were so loud, the whole house could hear you. Not that I make a habit of eavesdropping. Christopher opens and closes his mouth, but no words come out. He probably envisioned kicking me out so he could happily marry his young, pretty mistress. And his parents would welcome such a bride with open arms. That must have been the blissful plan he had in mind. Too bad. He can't get rid of me that easily, and Barbara is furious with him. His dismay is plain as day. Philanderers tend to get carried away in their own heads, unable to accurately predict other people's reactions. Your excuses only make you look pathetic. What you first spat at Patricia must be how you really feel, right?
Mom, I'm sorry.
Barbara lowers herself and grabs Christopher's head in a vice-like grip. Forcing his face upward, Christopher's lips tremble. Don't you think you're apologizing to the wrong person? Huh? As Barbara loosens her hold, Christopher crumples back onto the floor like a puppet with its strings cut.
If you want to marry your mistress, then sincerely apologize to Patricia and file for divorce properly. You're the one who'll pay alimony. And don't forget about dividing the assets.
Christopher's ragged breathing fills the air. Patricia, my bad. With his face still buried in the floor, Christopher chokes out an apology. It doesn't sound heartfelt in the slightest.
Mom. You're my mom, aren't you? Don't side with someone else over me.
The next instant, a crisp smack rings out. Barbara had slapped the back of Christopher's head. As he raises his face in shock, Barbara's palm comes swinging down again. Without any hesitation, Barbara slapped Christopher's cheek this time. The usually gentle Barbara contorted her face like a demon as she struck Christopher. It was Christopher who was hit repeatedly, yet my body was the one trembling.
Mom, why are you hitting me? Who are you calling an outsider? Patricia is your wife. My daughter.
Barbara raised her voice for my sake. Christopher, I'm fine with divorce. I was prepared for it to come to this. I dared to smile at the cornered Christopher. This seemed to ease Christopher's tension a little. I hope you can finally find happiness by marrying that 20-year-old girl. Thanks, Patricia. You weren't a bad woman either. I hope you find happiness in your next marriage too. Oh wait, that's impossible. You're already over 30, right? Just when the atmosphere was getting better, Christopher couldn't bring himself to wish for my happiness. He had been looking down on me all along. Barbara let out a deep sigh, prompting Christopher to hastily compose himself. Just as Patricia says, divorce properly and start a new life with the woman you love, Christopher. There's no need to continue a broken marriage. Yeah. I'll do that then. With Barbara's blessing for his marriage to the other woman, Christopher relaxed his face. Patricia, I'm really sorry. How insincere. Christopher came to apologize but whispered softly in my ear. No matter what she says, Mom still loves her own son more than someone else's daughter-in-law. Surprised, I recoiled, only to see Christopher sticking his tongue out. Barbara, do you really love a son like this? I pointedly asked Barbara, gesturing at Christopher. Cowering, Christopher stammered. That's not true. I didn't say anything. But his voice reached Barbara, who was right next to me. You. Barbara's fist trembled. It looked like she might let her clenched fist fly instead of words next. That's not it. I just meant that Mom is on my side. Because we're a family. A parent and a child. And you were always so hard on Patricia. Because she's an outsider, right? Even now, you're just pretending to be on Patricia's side to be polite, because she's an outsider, right? Christopher clung to Barbara. His words were so outrageously self-centered that Barbara's anger dissipated into a curt response. I had expectations for Patricia. I was guiding her to be worthy of being my daughter-in-law. If I didn't care, I would have left her alone. Like I did with you, Christopher. I knew about your infidelity for a while, but didn't think to scold you before it blew up like this. I may have put Patricia through a painful experience. But understand that I never disliked Patricia. Barbara squeezed my hand, and I nodded deeply. I knew how she felt ever since she told me to work harder. That's why I can overcome any hardship. Christopher still seems to be under some misconception. But I won't interfere with your new life at all. Live with the woman you love, just the two of you. Patricia, us parents, and the company you inherited from your father were telling you to abandon everything and enjoy your new life.
Oh, don't worry about us. Even if you two divorce, you'll stay by our side, right, Patricia?
At Barbara's question, I nodded firmly.
And you don't need to worry about the company either. Huh? I'm having my daughter take over. Daughter? But I don't have any siblings.
Saying that, Christopher's wide eyes were fixed on me. Barbara also gave me a gentle look. Glancing between their faces, I nodded again.
Yes. I will now protect the precious company that Barbara and her husband built.
Understanding the situation, Christopher crumpled to his knees. Christopher's parents had discarded their own son and were planning to have me, as their daughter, inherit the company.
You'd go that far over a little cheating. You're choosing an outsider over me. That's right. If it were just a single mistake, we might not strip you of your position as president. But you know, we know everything.
Christopher swallowed. Then my father-in-law Brian slowly emerged. The defiance drained from Christopher's face.
Christopher, being the president doesn't mean you're the company's supreme ruler who can do anything without consequences. News of your misdeeds has reached my ears. I may have retired, but I haven't lost my connections.
My father-in-law rarely came home even after retiring. Apparently, he had been supporting the company from behind the scenes.
First off, you seem to think womanizing is the norm, hitting on every young female new hire. You showered those who agreed to date you with expensive gifts and pressured those who refused with presidential orders. Either way, female employees kept quitting. The environment got so bad that even male and veteran employees left.
Christopher trembled pathetically, unable to make any excuses. He shuts up in front of the dignified Brian.
Furthermore, you put in way too much overtime and took too many business trips. I know most of those were unnecessary. What kind of work were you doing while dragging young female employees along?
Christopher hung his head even lower. Rather than fooling around too much at work, it seems he was barely working at all. I'm amazed the company lasted 3 years under a president like this.
How many employees do you think suffered because of you? You embezzled company funds too. That's a crime. You can't be allowed to continue as president.
Christopher's parents had given up on him precisely because they had investigated this. And they asked me, who had diligently devoted myself to the family, to become the new president. Christopher had lost his parents, his absolute allies. He thought he stood above a crowd of employees, only to suddenly fall from grace.
Christopher is the one who needs to leave this house.
He slowly sat up, blankly staring at the night sky above. Brian grabbed Christopher's arm and mercilessly tossed him out into the pitch-black darkness. After that, Christopher and I successfully divorced, and he paid me the compensation I deserved. Of course, we also fairly divided our assets. Furthermore, Brian made Christopher return the wages he had embezzled from me. My work was not for free, after all.
The company's money is my money, isn't it?
Surprisingly, he had little savings, and after repaying the embezzled funds, Christopher only had a few $1,000s left. So, he selfishly demanded a share of the company's money too.
What kind of thinking is that? The company's money is not your money. But I didn't get any severance pay. Isn't it awful to suddenly be fired as the president without any severance?
He doesn't seem to understand the gravity of his crimes, but he'll learn the hard way soon enough.
What you did was embezzlement. It's a crime. It's only a matter of time before you get arrested. Did you really think there would be no punishment after flagrantly embezzling on such a large scale? What? Really?
Having lost his title as president and with no money, 40-year-old Christopher was quickly dumped by his 20-year-old mistress. Christopher's head was indeed empty. He tried to find a new job, but after experiencing life as a king, becoming a regular employee felt humiliating. But he didn't want to get caught by the police. I could sense Christopher's desperation.
I want another chance. I want to be the president again. Let's make up. I won't fail this time. I just want a chance.
Then apply normally. If it's meant to be, maybe you'll get hired as a new employee.
No way, it's me, remember? The former president? At the very least, I should be an executive or something, right?
Too bad, but I take back what I said. If he does formally apply, I'll use my authority as president to ensure he doesn't get hired. In the end, Christopher was arrested before he could even start job hunting. The embezzlement alone may have resulted in just a fine. However, Christopher took thoughtless actions.
Patricia, you're the only one I have left. Please help me.
One day, I answered a call from an unknown number, and it was Christopher. His hushed voice sounded withered and desperate.
At this rate, I'm going to be thrown in prison. Hide me. And tell the police I didn't embezzle anything.
Apparently, when he was about to be arrested, he tackled a police officer with all his might and ran away. Where are you now? The small park near my house? Got it. I'll come right away, so wait there. In a sense, he had attempted marriage fraud with me, committed adultery, embezzled funds, and now fled from the police. He was likely acting on impulse without thinking deeply. It made me wonder how such a son was born to his wise parents.
Patricia, thank you. Everyone abandoned me after I stopped being the president, but you're different. I finally realized it. I love you, Patricia, who loves me.
In fact, I had just received a call from the police saying Christopher had escaped. One of the officers hit his lower back and was taken to the hospital. I had no obligation to hide Christopher. Cooperating with the police was my only choice.
I'll be hiding in the park waiting for you to come.
It wouldn't be me going to Christopher, but the police. When I opened the window on the second-floor balcony, I thought I heard a man's scream coming from somewhere far away. Christopher's stalking was resolved, and I devoted myself to my work as president. I had intended to shoulder the heavy pressure alone, but I realized it wasn't something a president should bear by themselves. I am supported by my employees. I didn't want to make the mistake of thinking the president was superior like Christopher did and treat the company as my personal property, so I strived for open communication. Thank you for taking over the company. I feel at ease with you, Patricia. I appreciate your hard work, but remember to prioritize your personal life too, okay? Don't worry about Christopher or us, and if you meet a wonderful person, get married. After the divorce, Christopher's parents adopted me, cherishing me as their daughter rather than their son's wife.
I'm not thinking about marriage. I mean, I'm already in my mid-30s.
Did you imagine becoming the president in your 30s?
No way. That was completely unexpected.
Then you can't say marriage is impossible either. It's your life. Live it joyfully. Barbara's face was etched with deep wrinkles as she smiled warmly.
Really? Being late because you were helping a pregnant woman on the side of the road is such a cliché excuse. Are you kidding me?
On the day of my son's wedding, I made a terrible mistake. In my desperation to get a pregnant woman in labor into my car and to the hospital, I completely forgot about my son's wedding. Stella, who was supposed to become my son's wife, was furious, breathing heavily in a way I'd never seen before, her facial muscles trembling with anger. This was entirely my fault. I need to apologize sincerely. Relatives are walking towards the reception venue. The sound of stones hitting the ground echoes in my ears. Stella looks at my dress, pointing at various spots with a puzzled expression. It's because when I helped the pregnant woman, her water broke and stained my dress.
Unbelievable. How can you show up looking so dirty? And the smell. Are you happy ruining my wedding?
I'm so sorry, Stella. I'll get changed right away and try to make it to the reception in time.
I don't care if it's true or not, but putting others first like this is unacceptable. You're a failure as a parent. Please leave immediately without showing your face to Joseph.
Stella, in her dress, removed a hair ornament she was wearing and threw it at me. The hair ornament must have been light and landed at my feet.
If it were me, I'd come here no matter if someone had collapsed in the middle of the road or if there was a car accident. Today is that important of a day.
Her anger didn't subside, and she grabbed stones from the ground and threw them at my face with all her might.
Ouch, Stella, stop.
I shield my face and get into my car. After hitting the car's windshield hard.
Go home,
Stella yelled. I gripped the steering wheel. It seems I won't be able to attend my son's wedding, and my relationship with Stella is completely broken. But, if my son Joseph can be happy, then this is for the best. It's all my fault today. I should just go home. Just as I was thinking this, there was a small knock on the passenger side window. It was a very unexpected person. My name is Scarlett. I lost my husband in a traffic accident when I was young and raised my son Joseph on my own. After graduating from college, Joseph got a job at a major electronics manufacturer. Finally, standing on his own 2 feet, he is now dating a woman he met at a party. The fact that my son became independent made me let my guard down, and the pain in my body I had been ignoring until now has started to stand out recently. I quit my job as a nurse, which I had been doing for a long time, and am unemployed now. I'm living modestly, dipping into my savings. It's regrettable that I have to rely somewhat on Joseph's income. In my mind, my son is still the boy who would call out, "Mom," and happily bring me snacks from the candy corner. My cute son of those times and the Joseph now with his stubble are the same person, right? I think to myself. Joseph, after work at night, always wears the same gray sweatpants and drinks while watching TV. But on weekends, he takes a shower in the morning, shaves his beard meticulously, and takes care of his eyebrows. He spends over 30 minutes in front of the mirror, then goes straight back to his room. After changing into a neat appearance, he comes out satisfied, takes out coffee from the fridge, and pours it into a cup. Going out today? A date? It's not really a date. I'm thinking of taking a walk along the river with her. After drinking the coffee heartily enough that I can hear it going down his throat, he brushes his teeth and then hurries off to meet his girlfriend. I take the newspaper out of the mailbox, pull out today's flyers, and put on my glasses. Now, which supermarket has the best deals today? Ever since I got married, it has been my daily routine to check the flyers like this every morning. Meat from this supermarket, vegetables from that one. After marking some flyers with a red pen, I suddenly tilt my head. Dressing up just for a walk. Does she really enjoy that? Joseph never wastes money unnecessarily, perhaps because I always nag him about saving money. As a child, he showed no interest in toys or video games, instead drawing on the back of newspaper flyers every day. Even his pencils and paints were hand-me-downs from a neighbor. Yet, Joseph never complained and seemed happy drawing every day. That day, I was cleaning from the morning, and by mid-afternoon, the doorbell rang. Who could it be? I wondered, opening the door to find Joseph standing there. What is it? Why did you ring the doorbell? Mom. There's someone I want you to meet. With a slightly embarrassed expression, Joseph introduced a young woman wearing a white dress standing behind him. Her slender, delicate arms suited the white dress perfectly. Despite it being the middle of winter, the woman, dressed in just a thin dress and a lace shawl, looked as beautiful as a fairy. Hello. My name is Stella. I'm dating Joseph. It's nice to meet you. The woman who introduced herself as Stella greeted me with a clear voice and a lovely smile. Joseph then said to Stella, "Please, come in," and led her to the living room. As I was looking for some snacks to serve them, Joseph came into the kitchen, so I playfully tapped his head. "If you were going to bring someone, you should have told me. I'm completely unprepared when you just show up like this." "Eh? Oh, sorry. Stella didn't want to tell you about coming over because she wanted to see our home as it is." "As it is, huh? I'm relieved I cleaned up in the morning." As we talked a bit, Joseph, with a serious look, told me he was considering marrying Stella. Joseph is over 30 now, and I had been bracing myself for a day like this to come. Still, the thought that the days of just mom and son might be coming to an end. It makes my heart ache a bit. Suddenly, Joseph's mobile phone rang, and he excused himself saying, "Sorry. It's a call from work," and left the room. Left alone with Stella, we chatted about trivial things until Stella pointed at a painting of the sea on the wall drawn by Joseph. "Is that one drawn by Joseph?" "Yes, it is. It's a bit see-through on the back because it's drawn on the back of a flyer, but it's a nice painting, isn't it?" Stella stood up to take a closer look at the painting Joseph had made. A blue sea and a blue sky. Nothing else, just an expanse of sea painted entirely with blue paint. The blue sea spread out with just blue, and in the blue sky, 2 small clouds floated. Joseph and I went to the beach for a swim just once when he was a child. I explained to Stella that this was a painting of the sea from that time. After silently staring at the painting for a while, Stella sat down quietly in front of me and said, "This painting is very sad." "Eh? Really? Oh, I always thought it was a happy painting of us playing at the beach." "Is that so? Normally, if you go to the beach, wouldn't you draw yourself swimming?" Stella said this to me as if making a clear statement. In this painting of the sea, there is only the blue sky and the blue sea. She declared that surely there were no happy memories of the beach, just a record of the first time seeing the sea captured in the painting. And on a flyer, no less. She criticized me for not even providing proper drawing paper, despite his talent for painting. "Joseph is a wonderful person. You should have given him a richer life. He has talent in his painting, and you are surely the one who crushed it." "That's not. Joseph never said he wanted to study painting seriously. I thought it was just a hobby. Surely he understood from a young age that the household was poor. Being raised in a single-parent home must have been hard for Joseph." Stella took out a clean white handkerchief from her bag and pressed it against her slightly moist eyes. Until Joseph returned from his call, Stella explained how Joseph has always been frugal. Listening to her, I was filled with remorse from the bottom of my heart. I was a saver, and I had instilled that in Joseph. Having been like this since childhood, perhaps Joseph, even as an adult, naturally practices it and is called a saver by everyone. Maybe Joseph had been complaining to Stella about not being able to afford luxuries as a child. Perhaps I was indeed a terrible mom, as Stella said. Joseph came back after finishing his call. Stella, as if forgetting all our previous conversation, asked if there was an old album of Joseph's childhood or something. While looking through the nostalgic old albums, Joseph and Stella talked happily about what photos to use for their wedding. Stella seems not to have a job and lives at her parents' house, helping with household chores. Thrifty Joseph and Stella, who lives with her parents, seem to make an effort not to spend money, often walking in the neighborhood park. Looking at photos of Joseph when he was young in the album. "We walked here the other day," she says with a gentle smile, truly angelic. A whole year was about to pass since our first meeting. Joseph and Stella continued to date smoothly, and from what I've heard, they got along well without any major arguments. Sometimes when they came to visit, Stella would look at the painting of the sea on the wall and murmur sadly, "Poor thing." So one day, I took it down from the wall and hid it in a corner of a shelf. I wanted to avoid anything that might worsen Stella's impression of me. Later, I had the chance to meet Stella's parents. Stella's parents seemed kind and gentle, impressed by how I had raised my son alone after losing my husband at a young age. Stella, not seeming amused, listened in silence. Even now, with the wedding imminent, a heavy atmosphere lingered between me and her. Then came the wedding day. The weather forecast promised clear skies all day. Blessed with fantastic weather, it was warm and pleasant despite being midwinter, with no wind. I managed to dress myself in a gown borrowed from a relative and wore sneakers to drive to the venue. I left home with more than an hour to spare. On the way, I stopped at a grocery store to buy a drink and noticed a woman crouched in a corner of the parking lot. I thought she was just sitting, but I could faintly hear moaning, so I approached. "Are you okay?" The woman sitting didn't respond to my voice. Instead, she was breathing heavily, desperately gripping the hem of her dress. I realized she was pregnant, and that she had just gone into labor. I was a nurse once, so I've seen this situation many times. In as calm a voice as I could muster, I smiled and said, "Can you get into my car? I'll take you to the hospital." The pregnant woman looked surprised, but then told me her regular doctor was at the city hospital. After laying her in the back seat, it seemed her water had broken, as amniotic fluid dripped down her thighs. I rushed back into the grocery store to buy a towel and wrapped it around her waist. After calling the hospital to inform them of her condition, I started driving. Lying down, she was contacting what seemed to be her husband on her mobile phone. I considered calling an ambulance, but decided driving her myself would be faster since the roads were clear. "It's okay, calm down. We'll be at the hospital soon. Just breathe deeply and try to relax. Let me know if you're cold, I can lend you my jacket or anything." In the car, I kept encouraging the pregnant woman. Upon reaching the hospital, I quickly handed her over to the medical staff waiting in the parking lot, and I felt a wave of exhaustion as the tension left me. After explaining the situation to the nurses, I was sitting in the waiting room resting and drinking juice, when two men approached me. They were the husband and father of the woman I had just helped. Both in suits, they must have been at work. They bowed repeatedly. "Thank you so much." Thanking me. I mentioned I used to be a nurse. "She will definitely give birth safely." And smiled. Then I noticed something. The father, an elderly man, was dressed in formal attire. Seeing him, I snapped back to reality and remembered. Right, I must hurry to the venue or I'll be terribly late. Cutting short their words of thanks, I said, "Sorry, I have to be somewhere," and quickly returned to my car to rush to the venue. Despite my haste, I arrived significantly late. The group photos were already done, and they were about to move to the reception. Then, I saw Stella in her wedding dress. Her face, peeking out from the pure white dress, was even more beautiful than usual, taking my breath away. Escorted by the staff, she walked step by step, like a lily flower in bloom. But the next moment, Stella's eyes met mine exactly. Then, ignoring the staff, she ran towards me with a face filled with anger. "I'm sorry, you see. On my way here, I came across a pregnant woman who had just started labor." "What? Helping a pregnant woman on the side of the road is such a cliché excuse. Are you kidding me?" I desperately tried to think of an excuse to prove it wasn't a lie, but couldn't come up with anything. I explained that I was so focused on getting the pregnant woman into my car and to the hospital that I completely forgot about the ceremony. Stella was angry, breathing heavily in a way I've never seen before, her facial muscles trembling. It was as if she was about to physically attack me, and I apologized earnestly. This was entirely my fault. I sincerely needed to apologize. Thinking about how Joseph would have been looked down upon by the attendees for having his parents' seat empty hurt me. Stella pointed at various spots on the dress I was wearing, her face forming a puzzled expression. It was because the fluid had stained my dress when I was assisting the woman whose water had broken. Unbelievable. How can you show up in such a dirty state? And the smell. This is too much.
Are you happy ruining my wedding?
I'm so sorry, Stella. I'll get changed right away and try to make it at least to the reception in time.
I don't know if it's true or not, but putting others first like this is unacceptable. You're a failure as a parent. Please leave immediately without seeing Joseph.
Stella slowly removed a hair ornament she was wearing and threw it at me. The hair ornament must have been light and landed at my feet. Her anger didn't seem to subside, as she grabbed stones from the ground and threw them at my face with all her might.
Ouch, Stella, stop! If it were me, no matter if someone had collapsed on the road or there was a traffic accident, I would come here. Today is that important of a day.
Despite Stella's words, calling an ambulance would have been slower than me driving her. Yet, I didn't have time to make such excuses as Stella kept throwing stones at me. I shielded my face and got into my car. After Stella hit the car's windshield hard, she yelled,
"Go home!"
I gripped the steering wheel. It seemed I wouldn't be able to attend my son's wedding, and my relationship with Stella was completely broken. But if it meant Joseph could be happy, then it was worth it. It was all my fault today. I was thinking of just going home. Just then, there was a small knock on the passenger side window. I stiffened and looked in that direction. The father of the pregnant woman I had taken to the hospital was looking at me with a refreshing smile.
Huh?
I just saw you at. As I opened the window halfway, the elderly man smiled even more warmly at me. I'm sorry I couldn't thank you properly before. My name is Anderson. I got out of the car, glancing at Stella still furious nearby, and bowed slightly before Mr. Anderson. The man who introduced himself as Anderson handed me a business card from a neat jacket. It bore the name of the company where Joseph worked, and seeing his title, I involuntarily covered my mouth. CEO. Are you the president of the company where Joseph works? Anderson smiled broadly and nodded. I had heard that Joseph's boss was coming, but I never imagined it would be the president himself. I admired Joseph's boldness for inviting him, but this wasn't the time for that. I'm embarrassed you had to see such a scene. As I apologized to Mr. Anderson, he shook his head and looked towards Stella. I was on my way to the ceremony when I got a call that my pregnant daughter had gone into labor and was taken to the hospital. I'm sorry for being late, Ms. Bride. No. If there was such a situation, being late is understandable. Is that so? I'm sorry, but your voice was a bit loud and it reached me. She is a savior to my daughter. I truly regret that her kindness caused you inconvenience. But Mr. Anderson continued that he was more angry than sorry. Mr. Anderson said with a stern expression and tone that I had helped his daughter, who couldn't even call for help because she was in labor. That even the hospital was impressed with how quickly I acted, saying that calling an ambulance wouldn't have been fast enough and could have been dangerous. And that he couldn't forgive anyone who would insult a person who had saved someone dear to him. Stella's face turned pale, and she was speechless. Soon, perhaps worried that the bride had not arrived yet, Joseph hurried over. Upon noticing Mr. Anderson, he immediately bowed deeply. Before I could explain the situation, Mr. Anderson, with a smile, stopped me and explained everything to Joseph. His account was much more exaggerated and kinder than anything I could have said. He described how a brave and wonderful woman had helped a pregnant woman, leading to her late arrival at the important ceremony, and how Stella, failing to understand, had thrown stones at me. Indeed, as befits the president of a large company, his explanation was very skillful. Joseph, who had been listening intently, was visibly shocked. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Stella's parents approached with concerned looks on their faces. Worried this might turn into a condemnation of Stella and ruin the wedding. I apologized to Mr. Anderson and to Stella as well. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's all my fault for not coming to the venue right away.
Yes, that's right. Normally, wouldn't you change at the venue? Why did you come from home already dressed?
Because I was told that using the dressing room at the venue would cost extra. I involuntarily shrank. Indeed, she was right. I could have sent the dress to the venue and changed there, using a dressing room. But I hesitated because of the extra costs for sending the dress and using the changing room. I had heard that the wedding expenses were carefully saved up by Joseph and Stella themselves. I didn't want to inflate the costs just because of me. Thinking so turned out to be a mistake.
Poor Joseph, having to live with such a poor mom. How sad for him. How much more do you plan to make him suffer?
My vision went white, and I placed a hand on my forehead and looked up at the sky. What a blue sky. What a perfect wedding it could have been, had I not been late. As I nearly collapsed, a large hand supported me from behind. Joseph firmly gripped my shoulder, staring at Stella. His eyes were not those of the kind son I knew, but rather cold.
Mom was very good at saving money, making sacrifices so that I could attend university without needing student loans.
I'm very grateful.
Joseph. It's true we were poor, but Mom always put me first, raising me with lots of love. You have no right to say she made me suffer.
I had always regretted making Joseph live a modest life since meeting Stella. Not being able to buy him the games he wanted, nor taking him to amusement parks. I thought maybe he resented having a forced saving mentality due to our poverty, not being able to say I want this, or I want to go somewhere. That's how I thought about Joseph. I'm sorry, Stella.
But after you've insulted Mom like this, I can't imagine a life with you anymore.
Let's call off the engagement.
What? Don't be ridiculous. Don't be such a mama's boy.
Stella's expression snapped with Joseph's unexpected declaration of calling off the engagement. Once as beautiful as a white fairy, her skin turned bright red, and mascara ran down from her tears, looking witch-like. As she cried and screamed like a demon, no one knew how to react, watching from a distance. Joseph spoke to her quietly, though his words likely didn't reach her ears. Still, he spoke in a calm, gentle voice.
Disregarding savings and mocking poverty is prejudice. Saving is necessary for the future. Instead of ridiculing it, I wished we could respect each other and acknowledge diversity.
I looked at Joseph's profile, which looked lonely. I thought he must still love her. Thus, the wedding was cancelled. When Stella's parents found out about the situation, they felt responsible and offered to cover all the expenses for the venue. However, Joseph, in his honesty, insisted that he also bore some responsibility and offered to share the costs. Stella's parents were deeply surprised by this. They apologized to me again, saying how sorry they were for what had happened to such a wonderful son. As a result, Stella was disowned by her parents and kicked out of her home. It seems Stella has become completely isolated, with the wedding incident spreading among friends. Now she's reportedly dabbling in unsavory clubs, using her beauty to her advantage. Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson's daughter gave birth safely, and both mother and child are healthy. Hearing this news through Joseph filled me with joy. On a sunny Sunday, as I started cleaning the room, I found the painting of the blue sky and sea tucked away in a corner. It was the painting by Joseph that Stella had called pitiful. Pausing my cleaning, I stared at it for a while until Joseph, just woken up and in his usual worn-out clothes, came out to get coffee from the fridge. "What are you looking at?"
"This painting you made when you were little. It used to hang on the wall, remember?"
"Ah, that one." Joseph took a sip of his coffee, his expression unnaturally stiff.
"Stella said it's pitiful that this painting is on the back of a flyer, implying you were poor."
At my words, Joseph snorted with laughter.
"It's not like I didn't have paper to draw on. And I didn't draw on the back of flyers because we were saving money or anything."
"What? Really?"
"Yeah. You always looked so closely at the sale flyers, right? I figured if I drew on the back of that day's flyer, you'd definitely see my painting."
I was so surprised that I gaped at him. Then, suddenly filled with amusement, I burst out laughing. Joseph, caught by my laughter, joined in, and our home was enveloped in joy.
"Next time, I'll find a woman who appreciates you too."
Saving is also good for the environment, after all. Surely you'll find someone wonderful. I conveyed this sentiment in my heart. I'll continue to support Joseph from the shadows. Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law. I had been preparing food and welcoming guests since the morning at a family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I was taking a short break on the sofa in the back. When my mother-in-law, Susan, found me sitting, her expression changed drastically as she approached me and snapped those words. "Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach." Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized while remaining seated on the sofa. As I struggled to get up, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave but then shockingly kicked my stomach.
"Susan, how could you?"
I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and fortunately, I didn't feel much pain.
"It's your useless body that's the problem."
This was a line I was all too familiar with after always being oppressed, but I was left speechless by the shock of being kicked in the stomach. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then. "My name is Anne. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I live happily with my husband Tom and our 3-year-old son. I am currently 9 months pregnant with our second child. Before the pregnancy was confirmed, it was decided that Tom would be transferred to work abroad alone. Although Tom insisted on staying in America, I didn't want him to give up his dream of working overseas, a goal since our dating days. After I encouraged him to the end, he promised to go abroad for just 3 years, and then he left. While I felt joy in supporting my husband's dream, there was one concern. The insidious harassment from Susan and Mike, my father-in-law. While Tom was around, they adored us, but in his absence, they subjected me to daily verbal abuse. Since Susan and Mike were kind in front of Tom, I always tried to bring him along. But for the next 3 years, I'll have to endure their malicious harassment alone, which is disheartening. However, I couldn't discuss it with Tom, knowing it would only add to his worries and considering Susan's feelings towards her son. Initially, I tried to please them by complying with everything, but no matter what, I only faced their resentment.
All I want is to get along with Mike and Susan.
Desiring a peaceful relationship with Susan and Mike, one day, I finally broke down and decided to be submissive. Then I heard shocking words from them.
"You stole our precious son from us."
That's what Susan declared.
"Ever since you married our son, he hardly pays any attention to us."
I finally understood the root of their relentless harassment. Susan and Mike were so overly fond of their son that they were jealous of me, his wife.
"If that's the case, I can always come with him."
Startled by Susan's unexpected confession, I tried to find a solution and offered various suggestions.
"The best thing would be for you to leave our son alone."
"Right.
Then he might return his love to us."
I was stunned by Susan's wish. The thought of them wanting a divorce because they felt their son's affection for them had diminished gave me chills. And this distorted expression of their love even scared me.
"Don't you like the idea of your son building a new family?"
I asked tentatively.
"New family?
That's ridiculous.
Our family is enough. No matter how old our son gets."
Realizing the extraordinary love they had for their only son, my husband, I was speechless.
"I love my husband. I want to get along with you and Susan, but I have no intention of leaving him."
Normally quiet, this was one point I could not concede. Seeing my resolve, Susan scoffed and retorted.
"Are you so confident that no matter how we treat you, you won't leave?"
From that day on, their harassment only intensified instead of diminishing. At one point, knowing I was allergic to shrimp, they sneakily added it to the fried food. I was about to eat it when my husband, who always harped on about my allergy, noticed and warned me.
"Shrimp? I'm sorry. Actually, this was a gift. I forgot you can't have shrimp."
Susan apologized to me repeatedly, making excuses. My husband seemed satisfied and asked her to be more careful in the future. But even as they spoke, Susan was stepping on my foot under the table. Amidst such harassment, we were leading a peaceful life when my husband's transfer overseas was confirmed. Susan and the others turned pale with shock as I celebrated.
Overseas. That's going to be hard on the child and Anne, right?
My father-in-law, Mike, really just not wanting to be separated from them, used me as an excuse. My husband said it was a decision we made together, and I knew the anger would soon be directed at me.
And did you even consider my grandchild's feelings?
Unsatisfied with my decision, Susan interrogated me like it was an inquisition. Fed up, my husband finally spoke out.
Both of you, enough. Working abroad has always been my dream. And is just supporting me in that.
He immediately defended me.
We support you too. But now just isn't the right time, is it?
Mike seemed a bit sorry, yet unable to agree.
That's right. The grandchild is only 3 years old. It's too much for Anne.
Susan, for once, seemed to be on my side, using my name in her argument.
I'm fine. Tom and I have discussed it and decided to go for it.
I spoke up, my voice trembling slightly, trying to act bravely so my husband wouldn't worry. Realizing our determination, Susan and Mike reluctantly accepted it, though with a sense of defeat. That night, feeling sorry towards Susan and Mike, my husband suggested we all have dinner together. I had been avoiding eating with them since the shrimp allergy incident, but I decided to endure it for my husband's sake.
Then let us, the ladies, get busy preparing in the kitchen. You relax.
Susan, excited to cook for her son after a long time, went into the kitchen. Hesitant to be alone with her, I steeled myself and followed her to the kitchen.
Aren't you afraid our son might leave you when he returns from abroad?
Susan's words, still hoping for our breakup, drained the blood from my face. Realizing it was pointless to engage, I silently started preparing. While we were working on different ingredients, Susan called out to me.
And that pot over there is cool.
Could you take it to the table? Busy with preparations, I followed Susan's instructions and grabbed the pot handle with my bare hands, only to let go immediately from the scorching heat. A pot of steaming hot beef stew fell right at my feet. I burned my hands and feet. Hearing my scream, my husband and Susan rushed over.
And did you touch it with your bare hands? I told you to be careful of burns. What should we do now?
Susan pretended to panic, but did nothing. My husband, seeing this, quickly instructed to bring a towel and ice. He also told Mike to call an ambulance. Seeing my red, swollen hands and feet, I could only cry in pain and frustration, clinging to my husband. Thanks to his quick thinking, I received proper treatment at the hospital and was told it would take 2 weeks to heal. Slowly, my spirit was breaking from Susan's escalating insidious bullying. As time passed and my husband's departure overseas approached, I made sure to avoid Susan and the others completely. Despite their vengeful attempts to visit our home or call multiple times a day, I never responded. For their excuses to see their grandchild, I sent pictures with messages. To my husband, I told him the reason for not seeing Susan was because of severe pregnancy symptoms, which he understood. Half a year passed, and the annual family gathering, highly valued by my husband's family, drew near. Knowing its importance, and though my husband said I didn't have to attend, I decided to go. I informed Susan of my attendance in advance through a message. Her reply, seemingly eager to finally vent her frustrations on me, brought back the flashbacks of my burn injury accident and filled me with more fear. Then, the day arrived when everyone was to gather. I briefly greeted Susan and Mike, then spent most of my time with relatives of my age, keeping my distance.
Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law.
I had been preparing meals and welcoming guests since the morning at the family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I took a rest on a sofa in the back. When Susan saw me sitting, she changed her expression and came over to me, throwing those words at me.
Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach.
Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized but couldn't get up from the sofa. Seeing that I couldn't stand, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave, but then shockingly, she turned back and kicked my stomach.
Susan, how could you?
I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and luckily, the pain was minimal.
It's your useless body that's at fault.
I was used to being oppressed by her, but I was left speechless and shocked by being kicked. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then,
Mom, what did you just do to Ann on the sofa?
someone shouted loudly, making everyone, including me, turn towards the voice. There stood my husband, who was supposed to be overseas for work.
Tom.
Susan uttered his name in a trembling voice. Painfully, I stood up from the sofa and slowly moved towards my husband.
What did you do to Ann just now?
He asked Susan, with an expression I had never seen before. Tom, why are you here? Until the previous day, my husband had apologized over the phone, saying he couldn't get a long leave and wouldn't be able to attend. I couldn't ask him to accompany me, knowing he had just been transferred overseas. Anne. I came back to surprise everyone. Tom's face softened as he looked at me, his expression changing completely from before. He rushed over to me, hugged me around my shoulders, and supported me.
But when I came back, I happened to see Mom and you having that interaction from the entrance.
He had been frozen for a while, not understanding the situation as he had never seen Susan like that before.
I was about to ask and what happened when Mom kicked her.
Hearing this, I realized he had witnessed Susan kicking my stomach. Looking up at my husband, I could see the anger in his eyes.
Tom, this is...
Relatives started gathering in the room, sensing the unusual tension, making the situation even more strained.
Tom, everyone is here, let's talk in the other room.
Susan tried to calm my husband with a quiet voice, attempting to defuse the situation.
And you don't need to say anything. I want to hear it directly from Mom.
Saying this, my husband turned his face towards Susan again. No, let's hear it here, in front of everyone. The relatives, stunned by my husband's raised voice, watched the unfolding situation in silence. The commotion got Mike and Mike's brother's attention, who had organized the family gathering.
What's all this commotion about?
Seeing the unusual situation, Mike hurried to Susan's side. Upon realizing his beloved son was there in front of him, Mike looked even more shocked.
Dad, it's been a while. I didn't want our reunion to be like this, but I just saw something unbelievable.
With Mike's presence, my husband regained some composure and continued in a calm voice.
What happened?
Mike looked slightly uneasy. He already knew Susan had done something to me. Having always turned a blind eye to Susan's bullying, he was part of it too.
It was just, and I were talking.
Susan stubbornly refused to admit she had kicked me, trying to get out of this situation. However, my husband quietly glared at her, wanting her to confess. Sensing the conversation wasn't progressing, I finally spoke up.
You kicked me in the stomach, didn't you?
I finally revealed in front of everyone that Susan had kicked my stomach. Hearing this, the relatives began murmuring.
And what an accusation! I would never do such a thing.
Susan shouted, flustered.
Never. What, Mom? I saw it with my own eyes.
My husband expressed his frustration and anger at Susan's denial and her true nature. As he seemed about to confront Susan, I urged him desperately to stay calm.
Tom, are you sure it wasn't a misunderstanding? Susan doing such a thing.
Mike continued to defend Susan until the end. Hearing this, my husband's suspicion only deepened.
Dad, even now, you're siding with Mom?
My husband was speechless at Mike's attitude, seemingly more afraid of Susan facing critical judgment than the fact she had kicked me.
Tom.
I could only hold his hand tightly. The ease with which his parents dismissed their daughter-in-law raised my husband's suspicions, bringing up a question in his mind.
Anne. This isn't the first time, is it?
My husband's intuition seemed to pick up on something from Susan's behavior. Trying not to worry him, I felt both frustrated and relieved that my strongest ally had finally appeared, bringing tears to my eyes. Realizing this wasn't the first incident, my husband asked,
Mom, what terrible things have you done to Anne?
his anger not subsiding but intensifying. The relatives intervened to stop Tom as he approached Susan and Mike.
Tell everyone here what pain you've caused, Anne.
As Susan heard this, her face turned pale, and she collapsed to the ground.
Tom, it's too harsh to treat Susan like this in her condition.
Mike began to show anger towards Tom.
Harsh? Then what about that burn?
Susan and I were shocked, as if our thoughts had paused for a moment. And the one who raised his voice upon hearing this was, surprisingly, Mike's brother.
And was burned?
Mike's brother, who had been quietly observing what he thought was a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue, spoke up for the first time, surprised by the unexpected development.
It seemed strange to me. That day, Anne got a severe burn holding a pot of just done beef stew with her bare hands.
My husband had been troubled by the fact that I had done something I would never normally do.
And would always check if it's safe before handling a pot with her bare hands if it were her own decision.
I always had a habit of double-checking everything, whether it was cooking or leaving the house, which my husband knew well. So, it seemed odd to him that I would grab the pot without thinking.
The beef stew was made by Mom. Did she say something at that time?
As he pressed for answers, Susan and Mike fell silent. Some relatives defended Susan, while others expressed disbelief. I decided to reveal everything.
That time, Susan said it was cool, right?
I repeated Susan's words with courage. I explained how I was busy with my own cooking preparations that day and took Susan's words at face value without checking the pot.
I regret not verifying and ended up getting burned.
I admitted my mistake. Hearing this, Susan's expression changed, and she glared at me, shouting,
"You are just trying to slander us. What kind of daughter-in-law are you?"
Susan, who had been subdued, became enraged when faced with me.
I'm not stupid. I have saved our interactions as evidence.
I had secretly been collecting evidence of Susan and Mike's insidious harassment, in case I couldn't endure it any longer. My husband showed a surprised expression, then I said,
"Tom, I'm sorry I kept quiet. I didn't want to worry you, and I was afraid of ruining your relationship with Susan and Mike."
The root of his parents' harassment stemmed from their affection for their beloved son. It was a twisted love, but I wanted to avoid worsening the relationship between Tom, who had been raised with much love from his parents. Susan and Mike, not expecting that I had been considerate of them, turned pale upon hearing this.
"Mom, Dad, did you hear? Even after all this, and was still thinking of us."
Tom apologized to me, ashamed that he hadn't realized the situation.
"And I'm so sorry my parents made you suffer this much."
Tom apologized with tears, and Susan, as if regretting how things turned out, exclaimed,
"No, it's wrong. It's her fault. She stole our precious son."
It was the moment Susan's true nature was revealed. The relatives around us looked on with cold eyes. Even Mike, considering his brother's reputation, tried to stop Susan's outburst. "Who stole me from you? Are you doing all this too and because of me?" My husband was speechless, not expecting such a distorted form of love where Susan's harassment was a retaliation for his affection being directed towards his new family.
"I'm grateful for how you raised me. But the most important thing to me now is and our family."
He expressed his feelings to Susan and Mike. He then shared how much respect and consideration we had always shown towards Susan and her family.
"Mom, Dad, I wanted you to see the irreplaceable love of your grandchildren and Anne's admiration for you."
Moved by their son's desperate plea, Susan and Mike seemed to finally realize the gravity of the situation, and Mike collapsed on the spot.
"Mom and Dad, you've destroyed your own daughter-in-law's love and my trust with your own hands."
Hearing this, Susan, realizing for the first time that she had disappointed her precious son, broke down in tears. Seeing Susan crying and distraught, a part of me felt sorry for her outburst. But more so, I felt a sense of relief in her taking responsibility for this mess. Mike's brother, changing the dire atmosphere, intervened.
"All right, this isn't a spectacle. The four of you,
Please move to a quieter room." With those words, the other relatives awkwardly dispersed. Receiving words of sympathy and encouragement, I began to relax a bit. Supported by my husband's arm, we moved to a quieter room as Mike's brother suggested. Once the four of us were inside, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. My husband still had questions for them, eagerly wanting to confront them. However, Susan and Mike looked so exhausted that he hesitated to speak. Then, Mike's brother entered the room. "Now we can have a calm discussion. Is it true that and was subjected to insidious bullying?" With a stern expression, Mike's brother asked directly. After a moment of contemplation, Mike finally nodded in resignation. Triggered by Mike's acknowledgement, my husband burst out.
To think my parents would do this while and was protecting our child and unborn baby, it's shameful.
He voiced all the accusations as if speaking on my behalf. He revealed that the shrimp allergy, the burn, and the kicking were all acts of spite towards me. I can't understand how Dad and Mom could hurt and to such an extent. Disappointed beyond imagination, my husband's disillusionment deepened. Then, Mike's brother brought an end to the discussion. "Tom, that's enough. As your uncle, I'm deeply sorry for such a shameful sibling. I can't forgive what they've done." He apologized to us, then rushed to Mike and struck him on the cheek. "As your brother, I cannot forgive your actions. Don't show your face at family events anymore." He then instructed Susan and Mike to leave immediately. Susan and Mike seemed to want to say something to me, but the fact that they had kicked me remained unchanged. I ignored their expressions and stayed close to my husband's side. Once Susan and Mike were out of sight, I finally felt a sense of closure and, perhaps relieved, I broke down crying. I don't remember much about what happened next, but my husband stayed by my side until the end. After the revelation of Susan's insidious bullying, my husband forbade any contact or visits from them. This helped me avoid seeing Susan, and gradually, my emotional wounds began to heal. The overseas transfer that was supposed to last 3 years was cut short by my husband, who didn't want to be away any longer. He returned to America after just 1 year. Initially, I was a bit apprehensive, but I supported his return, prioritizing the safe birth of our second child. Now, we are eagerly awaiting the birth of our second child as a family of 3. Susan still sends daily messages of apology, wanting to mend our relationship. When I express my fear of seeing them, my husband continues to prioritize my feelings. The relatives also talk about how haggard Susan looks now. And the general consensus is that it's their own fault. In a situation where my husband and relatives are on my side, there's not much Susan and Mike can do. So, once our second child is born, I plan to show them the baby. However, I have no intention of repairing the relationship with Susan and Mike. I'm resolved to spend an ordinary life with our family of 4, combining our strengths. I'm Vivian, 27 years old, and a pregnant woman about to give birth soon. My husband Bobby is 3 years older than me, a bit selfish, but I've always relied on him as I'm indecisive. However, being pregnant made me realize that boyfriends and husbands are different, and so are husbands and fathers. As a boyfriend, I appreciated him taking the lead, but as a married couple, it felt different. He just wouldn't listen to others. Whenever I gave an opinion, he would negate it, insisting he was always right. And now, as I'm trying to change into a mom, he still hasn't quite become a husband. He seems to hold the reins in our relationship. His values are, frankly, quite outdated. Sure, some couples work well that way. I've heard that was how it used to be. Husbands would earn a lot, allowing wives to focus solely on housework and childcare. But his salary isn't something to brag about. In fact, I was earning more before my maternity leave. I kept quiet about it though, to avoid upsetting him. He spends as much as he has, so we still keep our savings separate. I've been saving bit by bit, so I can manage the expenses even during maternity leave, something he doesn't seem to grasp. He probably thinks he's supporting me with his income alone. Likely, it's the influence of his parents. His mother has always been a housewife, with his father as the sole earner. That's fine. Both of his parents respect each other. I got that impression when I met them. A wife supporting her husband, and a husband supporting his wife, made it work. In our case, Bobby seems to look down on me. I don't mind him emulating Fael, but I wish he'd learn how to treat his wife as well. When Emael, Wallace, gave birth, Fael supported her as best he could and was proactive in childcare. Even at our first meeting, they seemed like a great couple, the kind I wanted us to be. With my due date being around Christmas, I wonder whether we should go to the in-laws' house. Then, an incident occurred at the end of the year, just before giving birth. In the afternoon, Bobby called from work.
Today's the last day of work before the holiday, so after I'm done, my colleagues will come over for drinks. Wait a minute, my due date is soon, right? You can't predict when the baby will come, at least go out to drink somewhere else.
Faced with this unbelievable suggestion, I was at a loss for words.
What? Are you trying to annoy me? I've already told my colleagues. Don't embarrass me. You always said, don't bring anyone over at the last minute. I told you first thing in the morning. Mom said she gave birth to me 2 days after her due date, and my sister was born a week late. So, a due date is just a guideline. That varies from person to person. Sure, a due date is just a prediction, but we need to be cautious around that time.
That's exactly what Wallace said when I announced my pregnancy. But she also said, it would be so much easier if babies would just listen to us before they're born. Bobby apparently not paying attention to that. Continued after a click of his tongue.
So, I'll stay home when the due date comes. Don't use pregnancy as an excuse to tie me down. I didn't see your messages today, so clean the house by the time I get back. It was messy when I left this morning. Don't embarrass me, and prepare food and drinks, okay? Remember to keep your promises. Wait, I'm pregnant. I can't even clean up. Remember I asked you to do it yesterday? The mess was because you didn't clean up.
He seemed to recall and then got angry.
You're a housewife, right? You're being supported, so don't make me do housework. Just do it already.
Saying that, he hung up. The mess he was referring to was actually made by him yesterday. He had brought colleagues home just before returning once before. I did ask him to inform me in the morning, but I never expected him to do this, especially not so close to the due date. My belly weighs about 3 kilos now, putting pressure on my organs. You wouldn't understand unless you've been through it. I didn't understand until I got pregnant. My sister-in-law, who's already had a baby, keeps in touch frequently. I feel blessed to share these hardships with her. Wallace reminisces about the past and brings things I need, and Fael helps out too. The in-laws' house is really nice. The baby in my belly, perhaps worried about me, kicks me repeatedly. It felt like a sign not to comply with his demands. So, I called his office. The person who answered passed the call to him. Hello, Bobby? It's impossible today. My belly's been kicked so much, I just can't move.
What? Don't call for something like that. I'll drink at a colleague's place then. Don't call the office again. It's embarrassing, cut it out. At least clean up. If you don't, it's divorce, understand?
All I could hear was the cold electronic tone in my ear. I couldn't believe he was this terrible. Lately, he has been using divorce as a threat for everything. He thinks I'm afraid of divorce now that we have a baby. He uses it to make me anxious. According to him, it's discipline. The only reasons I haven't divorced him are the possibility of change after the baby's birth and the in-laws' presence. How can someone from such a good family turn out like this? Knowing Sael, it's definitely not the parents-in-law's upbringing. It must be his friend's influence. At our wedding, one of his friends said, "Keep your wife in check." After that, he started acting more arrogantly towards me. Since the wedding, he has been acting even more bossy and bossy towards me. Just then, the phone rang at the perfect time, and I answered it.
Hello, Vivian, how are you feeling?
Wallace, it's not my body, it's my mood that's terrible. Wallace sounded a bit panicked over the phone.
The due date is Christmas, right? You might feel like you have a lot to do, but prioritize your baby and yourself first.
Thank you. But the problem isn't that. I'm sorry to say, but I might end up divorcing. I don't want to part from you guys, but I've reached my limit with this incident. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Wallace sounded frantic on the other end.
What happened all of a sudden? Can you explain?
Bobby called earlier, saying he's bringing colleagues home tonight. He told me to clean up and buy drinks and prepare. If I can't do that, he said it's divorce. So, I guess there's no other choice but to divorce. I've been threatened like this for a while now. Even the usually cheerful Wallace was silent, listening.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Bobby told me you were going to give birth near your parents' home.
What? I'm not at my parents', I'm at our house. I didn't understand why he would lie about that, but her response clarified it.
That's why I've been giving him money every day, as he said he couldn't eat properly. I should have taught him housework to reduce your burden. That's my responsibility too.
No, she did teach him. It's clear from how Sael is. He just chose to escape. Even Fael does the household himself. Really? I didn't know that. I'm sorry, I almost became an ungrateful wife without knowing the situation.
No, it's our fault too. If you're not at your parents', we're neglectful parents. We should have helped more. When he gets drunk, he won't get away with it. I'll give him a piece of my mind next time.
I was relieved to have a mother-in-law who would stand up for her son's wife like this. Thank you. I'm really happy I can rely on you, Wallace. You're like a real mom to me now. I lost my mother early, so her friendliness meant a lot to me.
I'm feeling okay for now, so I'll try to clean up. I'll order the drinks for delivery and take a break once it's done. Don't push yourself too hard. If anything happens, I'll come right away.
After I finished cleaning and was taking a break, he came back home. The party was mostly his colleagues being considerate, but a drunk Bobby started giving orders.
Hey, we're out of drinks, bring some more.
As he said this, a colleague went to get them, but that only made him angrier. Don't use my colleague, you've embarrassed me again. His colleagues, looking disdainful, soon said they had to leave. Fortunately, it was the holiday season, so there were plenty of excuses. As they left, he passed out, and I saw them out. One of them apologized profusely as they were leaving.
We heard you were pregnant, but didn't expect you to be at home. Please take care of yourself.
And stopped me as I tried to follow them to the door. After that, I don't remember much for a while. Later, Wallace told me she couldn't get through on the phone and found me unconscious when she arrived. She had called an ambulance in a hurry. I regained consciousness on a hospital bed. Still feeling weak, I decided to keep my eyes closed and rest a bit. Just then, the door to the hospital room opened. What the hell, you're sleeping soundly. I rushed here for nothing. The house is still a mess, nobody's there, and I get a message to come to this hospital? You've embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. It's definitely divorce now. In fact, wake up already, I need you to sign the divorce papers. The juniors were disgusted with you. A wife who can't even prepare properly, maybe I should divorce you quickly without you noticing the affair. That way, I can marry my girlfriend. No alimony, huh? Am I a genius or what? No, you're an idiot, I wanted to shout, but I had to pretend not to notice and gather evidence. But how? Just then, Bobby's mobile phone chimed with a notification. He looked puzzled. Why am I getting a message from Vivian? What? I'm keeping Vivian's phone? Take care of your wife if you want it back? Who is this? Some creepy person. Take care of my wife, like I don't need her. Thinking I was unconscious, he kept talking. Ever since getting pregnant, she's gotten lazy with housework, doesn't care about her appearance, and just keeps getting fatter. That's natural, I thought. I'm pregnant with your baby. I need nutrition for two. The doctor even said my weight gain was appropriate. He probably doesn't know that. If only my mobile phone was nearby, I could have recorded this. And to think he's having an affair too. His morals are skewed, but so is that woman. Would you be able to forgive yourself if you were in the same position? Is it even right to engage in adultery with a straight face when your beloved's baby is about to be born? In the first place, is it right to commit adultery? Hey, is the person messaging actually her affair partner? That would make sense, huh? So she having an affair too? What ridiculous reasoning. Does he have the brain of an elementary school detective? People who cheat always think their partner is doing the same. Bobby must know he's in the wrong. There's only one truth, and no justification for infidelity. Then his phone rang again. Huh? I'm not the affair partner? Is this guy psychic? Then who is it? Strangers shouldn't meddle in our business. Who's a stranger? This is a family matter. The door opened, and Wallace barged in.
What? Why's Mom here?
Why wouldn't I be? I sent the message. Bobby seemed flustered by this unexpected visitor.
No way, you came all the way from home? I didn't think you would be here, let alone have Vivian's phone. Don't tell me, Mom, you've been brainwashed with lies to excuse her laziness, right?
She began to speak quietly, regretting what he had done. I've been listening to everything you've said since entering this room, using the mobile phone there. He looked where she was pointing and seemed shocked. She had hidden her phone in the gap of my bed and connected a call to my phone. The recording function was also used, so the affair was fully exposed. The worst part is, you neglected Vivian, who's risking her life to give birth to your baby, to mess around. You don't deserve to be a dad. It was an impulse. Vivian hadn't been paying attention to me for a while. Just then, one of my junior female colleagues was, well, giving me attention. Hearing those words, I reached my limit and sat up, shouting. Don't joke with me. I'm trying to give birth with all my might. And you play around on a whim? He, finding no words to reply, looked down in silence. You have acted despicably. If you mention divorce, I have no choice but to accept it. When it happens, I'll be on her side. I almost died giving birth to you. I've told you this before. Your sister can't forgive your actions as a woman either. She just gave birth recently too. He made a face as if to say, crap. Doesn't he understand that when having an affair?
But look, I rushed here as soon as she woke up. The affair was a momentary lapse. I swear I won't do it again. I really wasn't myself. I won't invite work colleagues home anymore. I'll end the affair and give all my salary to you. Please, consider this my last chance.
Saying this, he kept apologizing. I smiled and called out to him. Bobby. Hearing my voice, he looked at me, as if relieved of his guilt. Thank you, Vivian. I'll really change. What are you misunderstanding? This was your last chance. Understanding my words, his face shifted from relief to despair. By the way, Dad, me, and your sister haven't forgiven you. Dad even said, don't come home even if you divorce. Basically, you're disowned. I think that's only fair.
No way, give me a break. Where am I supposed to go?
He grasped at her feet as if begging. Bobby, you neglected your wife who's about to give birth, had an affair, invited colleagues home, and sent her to the grocery store. That's 2 strikes for me and Dad.
So there's still...
Before he could finish, I spoke. No. Sister-in-law makes it 3 strikes, and I'm the game set. We'll divorce once the baby is born. As for the broken promise, make sure you pay alimony and child support as a dad.
I need to be a father to the baby. Don't divorce me. I'll give you all my money. I'll lose my position at work.
Even now, he seemed more concerned about saving face. That's fine. Your work colleagues have already contacted me while you were on your way here. Remember when you invited them home without notice and gave out my contact? Someone I didn't recognize called, saying they were supposed to come today. I didn't know the situation, thought your wife went back to her parents. It'll probably be gossip after the holiday season.
Please, explain to them it's a misunderstanding.
Still seeking self-preservation, he didn't seem to care about me. Misunderstanding? It's the truth. The baby will be raised by me, my parents, and your family. We all agreed unanimously. By now, and make sure you keep your promises this time. This was what Bobby had told me over the phone. Her parents, your dad and sister, are coming soon. Take responsibility for your actions. We'll apologize for our son's misconduct at the end. Then we'll make sure she and the baby don't suffer. We won't be lenient. We'll front the money, but this isn't for you, it's for her. Work hard at Dad's friend's workplace to pay it back. You won't be comfortable at your current job anyway. You have no choice. Fine, I'll figure out the money. I'll remarry my girlfriend. She loves me. She's making money online streaming, something about relationship advice. Love Me channel, that's it. I'll join her and make a fortune. Then I'll be a billionaire. Planning all alone, how foolish. Well, good luck with that, you're a fool till the end. Wallace, it's fine. Bye now. Bobby left cheerfully, but with trembling feet. He fled before Fael and Sael arrived. The next day, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I had a lawyer handle the alimony and child support claims. Of course, I claimed from his girlfriend too. I continued interacting with my ex-husband's parents, and after settling into motherhood, I received alimony from Bobby. He refused the advance from FIL and borrowed from consumer finance. And it seems, from shady places too. He thought he could repay quickly with his girlfriend's earnings. But reality isn't so sweet. His girlfriend left her job after their relationship became known at the company, making things awkward. The incident of him drinking at home spread around his company, and he quit. His last hope, the streaming, leaked somewhere, and the channel disappeared due to the affair despite being about relationship advice. Doing bad things doesn't pay off. Who leaked it? Sael was giving a thumbs up, but it must be my imagination. If he hadn't mentioned the channel name, maybe it wouldn't have gone this far. In the end, he couldn't pay back and is now missing. My daughter and I will surely be lovingly raised by two wonderful families.
There is no seat of mine.
Olivia, oh, your seat? I canceled it.
Ava.
Today is the wedding ceremony of my dear brother, Jack. Me, his real sister, not having a seat at the groom's side is unthinkable. What do you mean by canceled?
Oh dear. I mean exactly what I said. Your seat isn't here anymore.
Laughing almost cartoonishly, adorned with numerous necklaces and bracelets, is Ava, the bride's mom. To me, she's just my sister-in-law's mom, not someone I usually interact with much. But, as it turns out, Ava and I have a bit of history. I'm Olivia, a 25-year-old singer. Since childhood, I've pursued my dream, enduring hardships and disappointments, but 3 years ago, I passed a crucial audition. That led to hit songs, and now I'm busy with solo concerts and TV appearances. I met my husband, Michael, at work, and we married a year ago. Both my professional and personal life are thriving. It's all thanks to the support of my family. Especially my brother, Jack, who's always been here for me. He had been claiming to me as, "I'm your first fan," since my debut. However, in the entertainment industry, I sometimes face criticism for being frivolous or chasing dreams endlessly. When Jack's marriage was decided, my biggest concern was exactly this. I worried if Jack would be badmouthed by his wife's family because of my career, but Mary and Ava, his wife and mother-in-law, smiled and supported my work. I was so happy with that, yet I never imagined today's wedding turning out like this. Come on, how long will you stand there? You're obstructing the other guests. Please leave quickly.
What are you talking about? Today is my brother's important wedding. I'm definitely attending.
How many times do I have to tell you? You don't have a seat. Just go home immediately. Then, a staff member from the venue, seemingly unable to watch any longer, came to help. If there's been a mistake, we can arrange a seat for you. What would you like to? It's fine. Today is my daughter's wedding. The presence of someone like her would only lower the grade of the ceremony. No need for unnecessary interference. What do you mean by that? Don't you get it? I don't want someone with a frivolous job like yours in my family. I cannot let that comment go. Please retract it. Where did I go wrong? I'm proud of my job. Just because you're a bit famous, you act so high and mighty. You're just a one-hit wonder, aren't you? You'll fade away soon enough. I was so stunned by her words that I fell silent. My husband Michael, perhaps out of anger, had gone pale and was glaring at Ava. Was Ava really so pleased with our situation? She dramatically spread her arms wide with a triumphant look. Her heavy bracelets clanged loudly. If you really want to attend badly, there's one condition. If you can meet it, you're welcome at the wedding. All right, let's hear it for now. Though I was thinking, what kind of condition? I prepared to listen. Ava's face twisted into an even more satisfied, mocking smile. Quit your singing career. Then I'll allow you to attend. I couldn't help but raise my voice at Ava's outrageous suggestion. Ava snorted arrogantly. Her expression seemed to say, there's no way you could do that. She knew I couldn't accept such a condition and seemed to enjoy seeing me struggle. You can't do it, can you? You always put yourself first. Your job is more important to you than your own brother, isn't it? Such a selfish and detestable woman. There's no place for you here. Just leave. Shocked by her cruel words, my husband Michael started to retort, but I pulled his arm to stop him. Michael looked at me unhappily, but I shook my head slightly and then faced Ava squarely. Understood. Then, we'll leave here. What? Michael, let's go. Wait a minute. This is your own brother's wedding, are you sure? Ava seemed panicked as I began to leave the venue, was saying nonsensical things. My reaction must have been quite different from what Ava had expected. Perhaps she thought I would be crying, begging, please let me attend the ceremony. Right after leaving the venue, I heard Ava's screeching voice. How insolent! But I didn't stop. As I walked down the corridor, I heard someone calling my name from behind. Turning around, I saw Jack running towards me, looking frantic.
Sis, I heard everything. This is unbelievable, truly unacceptable.
Jack, calm down a bit.
How can I stay calm in this situation?
Michael and I had to soothe an agitated Jack together. Once he calmed down a bit, I took a deep breath and faced him. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't mean to cause trouble on your special day. This isn't something you should apologize for, sis. But why would Ava say something like that? Well, anyway, now things happened like this, I'm calling off the wedding. Then it's my turn to be surprised.
What? Wait a minute. That's too much.
I can't have a wedding feeling like this.
But what about Mary?
I'm fine with it. Surprised by the unexpected voice, I turned to see Mary standing there. Dressed in a beautiful white wedding gown, Mary looked like a fairy, but her face was clouded with sadness. This pained my heart even more. I'm sorry that my mom's behavior. I don't understand why she did that. It's not Mary's fault. But I can't go on with the wedding knowing I've caused you such distress. We'll explain it to the guests. So, sis, don't worry about it. All right. But don't push yourselves too hard. Sis, I'm sorry. I'll come and apologize properly later. I'm very sorry. Mary. Tears streamed down Mary's face as she apologized repeatedly, and I felt like crying too. What should have been the happiest day of her life was ruined.
This made me even angrier at Ava.
But there was nothing more we could do there. Michael and I left the venue with feeling terrible. According to Jack, who called me that night. When Ava heard the wedding was cancelled, she was furious. Seemingly oblivious that she was the cause, although she ranted about the preparations and the money spent. However, an angry, tearful Mary and Ava's husband, now aware of the situation, scolded her, and she reluctantly backed down. Jack and Mary told the guests that a family member had fallen ill as an apology. Not revealing the truth was probably their way of showing some mercy to Ava. Thinking of their feelings, I felt deeply saddened. How did things end up like this? While Jack and Mary's support was comforting, but I couldn't help feeling down, blaming myself for being a singer. A week later, Michael and I visited Jack's house. We had received a call from Jack and Mary, who wanted Ava to join them in making a formal apology. They should be the ones coming to our house. Ava absolutely refuses to do that.
Are they really sorry then?
I think so too, but considering Jack and Mary's feelings. I didn't want to see Ava, but after hearing Jack and Mary's earnest apologies on the phone, I couldn't refuse. Besides, I had something important to resolve. Sis, sorry for bothering you today. Mom, come on, greet them properly. They apologized repeatedly as we arrived. Ava, looking displeased, merely muttered, "Oh, hello." Seeing this, an almost tearful Mary scolded her. I was beyond anger, so already wanting to leave, but I didn't. Because Jack urged, "Please come in." Michael and I sat down, opposite side was Jack and Mary, with Ava also seated. It's about. Mary began. I wanted to be a singer. It's embarrassing now.
There's nothing embarrassing about it. Mary has more talent than anyone.
Mom, please be quiet. As you can see, she was more enthusiastic about me becoming a singer than I was.
Singing is the perfect career for Mary.
Please, just be quiet. Ava, about to start shouting, was silenced by Mary's firm words. Of course, singing was my dream too. But as I realized there were better singers out there, my desire faded. Yet, Mom insisted I become a singer. So, 3 years ago, in my graduation year, I promised the audition I took that would be my last. If I passed, I'd pursue singing, but if I failed, I'd give up. And I failed.
It wasn't just a failure. You made it to the final round. You were almost successful.
As Ava exclaimed, I was intrigued by the audition 3 years ago. It was the same audition that kick-started my career as a singer. I had a suspicion. Mary, was that the audition? Yes. The same one Olivia passed. I participated too. I hadn't realized it at all. You only care about yourself, don't you? Such an unpleasant woman. Mary, with tears in her eyes, reproached Ava, who spat out her words with vehemence. As I watched the two of them, I finally felt a sense of understanding. Hearing Mary's story, Ava's past behavior finally made sense to me. And seeing Ava's attitude now, I decided to go through with a decision I had secretly made. I finally understand, Ava. Oh, what's with that look? How insolent. Honestly, I wasn't sure whether to say this or not. After all, you're Jack's mother-in-law. I didn't want to make a fuss. What do you mean? Ava, you've been saying it all along, haven't you? To introduce Mary for a singing job or to refer her to my agency. Eh? Mom, you said that?
That was just small talk. Even for small talk, it felt like big pressure. You became more aggressive when I didn't take you seriously, and recently,
You even threatened to sell my private photos to a tabloid if I didn't introduce her. Hey, that's practically threatening. Jack, enraged, leaned forward, but I gestured for him to stay calm. Next to him, Mary opened and closed her mouth in disbelief. She might have been too shocked to find words, not expecting her own mom to do such things. I felt a bit guilty, but I couldn't stop now. The incident at the wedding ceremony, was it your way of getting back at me because things didn't go your way?
Mom, did you really do such a terrible thing?
That is. You coward. Bringing this up in front of Mary. I knew Ava didn't want Mary to know about her actions. Mary would be hurt if she found out. That's why I had been hesitant to say anything. But I had explained the situation to Michael, then he nodded slightly at me from beside of me. Ava was ignoring Mary's attempts to stop her, approached me, veins throbbing on her temples. Let me make it clear. Mary has far more potential as a singer than you. If it weren't for you, she would have passed the audition. She could have been a singer, even a star. I let her marry into a less impressive family, thinking it might lead to a singing opportunity for her. How dare you take advantage of my kindness? Ava's intensity silenced not just me, but Jack and even Mary. As we stood there stunned, Ava continued her irrational tirade. You probably used some dirty tricks to pass that audition, didn't you? Bribe the judges, maybe even seduce them. You seem like the type of doing that really well. Even now, who knows what you're doing to get work?
Mom, please stop.
Mary's tearful plea seemed unheard by Ava. I was so overwhelmed, I didn't know whether to be angry or sad. Then, Michael spoke up. Olivia passed the audition on her merit. Aren't you a sweet husband? But your wife's popularity is just a fluke. Likewise, Mary failing the audition was a matter of merit. Michael's firm tone even caught Ava off guard. I remember that audition 3 years ago well. All the finalists were closely matched in talent. But Olivia had the strongest determination to become a singer. What right do you have to say that? You're not even involved. I am involved. Huh? I was a judge at that audition. I'm Michael, a music producer.
Michael, the famous music producer Michael?
Michael is known as a famous music producer whose works are all hits. Even those not well-versed in music have likely heard his name. He seldom appears in the media, so his face isn't widely recognized. That's why it's understandable that Ava hadn't recognized him. Ava blinked in surprise for a while, but then approached Michael with a sly smile. I had no idea that you were the famous Michael. You should have told me sooner. What would you have done if I had? Of course, I would have introduced Mary to you. She's a diamond in the rough. With your help, Michael, she could become a star singer. Enough, Mom. Do you even know what you're saying?
Be quiet. I will make Mary a singer, no matter what. Stop it, please.
Mary yelled with a voice that sounded to shake the room, tears streaming down her face as she glared at Ava. Her face was red with anger, fists clenched tightly, clearly furious from the bottom of her heart. In conclusion, Mom just wanted to make me a singer for her own vanity and desires. That's the worst. How can you say such things to your mother? A parent's dream is their child's dream. Children have a duty to fulfill their parents' dreams. Don't you understand that? I gave birth to a child with a talent for singing, just for this. Don't talk nonsense.
The one talking nonsense is you. You could have been rich and famous. What a disappointment.
That's it. I've had enough. I'm cutting ties with you, Mom. What? Are you out of your mind? From this moment, you are a stranger to me. Please leave.
Mary, don't joke around like that.
Get out. Mary, with a strength that belied her slender arms, pulled Ava and pushed her outside the door. Ava, having been thrown out, angrily pounded on the door. When Mary threatened to call the police if she didn't quiet down, Ava's anger turned to tears and pleading.
Mary, why are you doing this to me? I've always done everything for you.
Still saying that. Apologize to Olivia, you shameless woman. Watching Mary shout pained to me, but I was glad she stood by me to the end. I secretly decided that if Jack and Mary would have another wedding, I will definitely support them. 3 months after the incident with Ava. Ava, disowned by Mary, was also divorced and kicked out of her home by her husband. It was discovered that she had secretly incurred debts in her efforts to make Mary a singer. She faced claims for damages to her family and me, as well as the wedding cancellation fees, which further increased her debts. Now, she's living modestly, working part-time to repay her debts. Having been a housewife for so long, it's been tough for Ava to work outside. She frequently contacts Mary, saying, "We're family, after all." But Mary firmly rejects her each time. This experience taught me that being a well-known name can unexpectedly attract resentment. Although having achieved my dream, I consider myself fortunate and will continue to work hard as a singer. The compensation money from Ava was given to Jack and Mary, which they used for their rescheduled wedding. Seeing them finally happy was a great joy for me.